On Thursday the 7th of May, Federico Valverde walked into the Real Madrid training ground. And he shook hands with every single one of his teammates. Every single one except Aurelien Tchouaméni. What followed was one of the most embarrassing days in the club's history. Valverde spent the entire session putting in reckless challenges against Tchouaméni. Then, after the session back in the dressing room, they had a fight. Apparently insults were thrown and one thing led to another, and Valverde banged his head on a table and was sent to the hospital. One of the club's captains, unconscious on the dressing room, just days before El Clasico. And the crazy part is that's not even close to the full extent of what's going on at Real Madrid right now. Because that fight wasn't just a one-off event. It was the result of a problem that has been unraveling for years. And when you zoom out and look at everything together, the Mbappé situation and the managerial chaos, what you're actually looking at is a club that has completely lost the plot. So let's start with Mbappé, because statistically he has had an unreal season. 41 goals in 41 games. If we go by numbers, he's easily Real Madrid's best player. And yet, as of late, over 70 million people have signed a petition ordering him to be removed from the club. Now, this petition is definitely boosted by bots, but even if you discount the majority of those signatures, the sheer scale of the backlash says something pretty real. But one Reddit comment that really stuck with me said, "I don't get it, why is Mbappé the problem? He's a forward, his role is to ultimately score goals, which he's done like no other." And honestly, it's not a bad point. But here's where it gets more complicated, because the frustration with Mbappé isn't about his goals. He's got that. The issue is literally everything else. Tactically speaking, fitting him and Vinicius Jr. in the same team has never really worked. They occupy the same places on the pitch, and honestly neither of them tracks back or does defensive work. The team honestly just becomes one-dimensional and predictable with them in it. And you also can't ignore the fact that Mbappé joined the team when they were just coming off the high of a Champions League trophy, and since his arrival, they have been trophy-less for 2 seasons. And then there was the Sardinia moment. Mbappé was supposed to be recovering from a hamstring injury ahead of El Clasico. Instead, photos emerged of him and his girlfriend on a yacht in Sardinia. And following that, his private jet landed in Madrid just 12 minutes before they were supposed to kick off against Espanyol. So while Real Madrid were giving it their all on the pitch, their star striker was just stepping off a plane from Italy. And honestly, while I do think the response was pretty harsh, it was a poor act from Mbappé. Like when Jude Bellingham had his shoulder injury, he was always present in the stands for every single one of Madrid's games. And to me, it kind of shows that Mbappé doesn't fully buy into Real Madrid. His representatives pushed back, saying that the trip was just a recovery period, which was strictly supervised by the club. Arbeloa, the manager, backed him up, saying players can do what they want in their free time, but the damage was already done. And this to me is the Mbappé paradox. He scores the goals, he does his job, but something about the way he carries himself, the individualism, the attitude in training at times, and now the Sardinia trip, makes people feel like he's not really one of them. And at a club like Real Madrid, where loyalty means everything, he is making such a crucial mistake. But Mbappé is just one part of a much bigger dressing room problem. Because when that Valverde and Tchouaméni story broke, a few other incidents started coming out as well. Apparently, Antonio Rudiger had a separate altercation with left-back Alvaro Carreras at training. And separately, Mbappé himself had a flare-up with one of Arbeloa's training staff. So within the space of a week, you had 3 separate incidents at the exact same club. The Athletic spoke to multiple sources close to the dressing room this week, and the picture they painted was genuinely alarming. One source described the dressing room as maximum alert. Another said the club has a huge problem. And sources close to the senior players said it would be impossible for Valverde and Tchouaméni to stay at the club beyond this season. I mean, some guy literally said, "Are we in the end game right now?" And that has over 4,000 upvotes. But here's what I think is the most revealing detail about everything that's come out recently. Sources said that Valverde's behavior has been like this the entire year, and that his attitude was unworthy of a captain. So clearly this isn't end of season frustration just boiling over. This is what Real Madrid have looked like this whole season. They're facing such a foundational problem that you can't expect managers or a president to fix. And that reason brings me to my next point. Cast your mind back to the start of the season. Real Madrid had just brought in Xabi Alonso, a guy who was fresh off that remarkable unbeaten season with Leverkusen. He was clearly one of the most exciting coaches in the game. So it did feel like something very special at the time. It was a club legend coming home to build something new. But by January, he was gone. And the way it happened just tells you everything about the club. A group of senior players openly rebelled against his methods. The most visible moment being when Vinicius Jr. publicly defied him last October at the El Clasico. And rather than backing the manager and disciplining the players, the club hierarchy did the complete opposite. They turned on Alonso, blamed him for not being able to control the team, and sacked him after just 7 months. To me, you can't give a manager of that quality such little time. He should honestly still be the manager right now. His replacement was Arbeloa, a guy who had never managed a professional first team in his entire life. And they just threw him into arguably the most dysfunctional dressing room in football. So predictably, it hasn't really worked. The training ground has descended into literal war under his watch. And now everyone's talking about who's next. Because here's the thing about Real Madrid and Florentino Perez, the club's president. This isn't a new story. Go back to the early 2000s. Perez assembles the first Galactico generation. Figo, Zidane, Ronaldo Nazario, Beckham. The most famous players in the world all at the same club. And for a while, it worked. But then it fell apart. 3 years without a trophy, which at the time was the worst spell the club had faced in over half a century. They then also had manager after manager, with none of them being able to switch it around. Zidane said it best at the time. When Makelele left and Beckham arrived, his reaction was, why do you keep adding gold paint to the Bentley when you've already sold the engine? And that's what the Galactico era became. It was spectacular on the surface, but beneath that, it was dysfunctional. Now look at today, Perez has done the exact same thing, it's just under different names. And the exact same cracks have appeared. Too many egos, not enough team. Honestly, not enough leaders willing to put the team before themselves. For me, it was the departures of Kroos, Modric, Nacho, and Vasquez, which left a massive hole in their leadership roles. Because for years, those were the players that set the standard. But now without them, we're just left with a bunch of egos at the club. So what's Florentino Perez's answer to all of this? Jose Mourinho. And I want to be honest about how I see this, because I think bringing Mourinho back is just the latest in a long line of decisions which have led the club to misery. It's this idea of prioritizing elite names over actually making the squad better. And also just look at Mourinho's actual record since he left Madrid the first time. He hasn't won a domestic league title in over a decade. He hasn't even won a single Champions League knockout game in 12 years. He's been sacked by Chelsea, Manchester United, Roma, Spurs, and Fenerbahce. He's honestly just a former shell of himself, which is kind of sad to see. And also, if he does join the team, the environment he's walking into is an environment that has already spat out 2 managers in 1 season. It's so clear that the players have the power, and when that happens at a club, your club fails. And also just think about the managers who have actually succeeded at Real Madrid. They tend to be quieter, less interventional, like Ancelotti and Zinedine Zidane. They were able to control their egos while still giving their superstar players the freedom they need to excel. And when you think of Jose Mourinho, he is the opposite of that in every single way. He's loud, he likes to force his play style onto his players, and there's nothing wrong with that if it's with the right club. But that club just isn't Real Madrid. So yes, Real Madrid are a mess, and yes, they need fixing. But Jose Mourinho is definitely not the answer. He feels like a rumor that has just been casted to generate headlines, which when you think about it is a pretty good description of how Real Madrid are today.